Hello there, product people. Welcome to the show that supercharges your abilities to become better thinkers, makers, and leaders. I'm your host, Alsawi, and I'm thrilled to have you join me for this exciting episode of Product People. As people, we often reflect on our purpose, our reason for existence, and how we make a meaningful impact on others. However, we typically neglect to trust our intuition when we have an idea to address a meaningful problem. In this episode, we will explore how product people can design and grow a business that truly makes a difference in everyday lives. So if you enjoy food and are curious about business design, you're in the right place. Expect an inspiring conversation, compelling stories, and valuable insights that can fuel your own journey with product, design, and leadership. Let's dive right in. Today, I'm joined by Giovanni, Angelucci, and Tony Ayala. Gio got tired of settling for terrible tasting gluten-free bread with bad ingredients, so he created a healthy bread made from foods you should be eating and brought it all across North America. He comes from an entrepreneurial family and has always been involved in family businesses. The Angeluccis believe that if a good idea exists, everyone should benefit from it. So when Gio's mom had been struggling to find a good gluten-free bread that was tasty and made from wholesome, nutritious ingredients, he set out to make it happen by starting Queen Street Bakery, even though he had never been involved in food business before. Outside of work, Gio spends his time with his family and friends traveling, cooking, and eating. He enjoys keeping active with soccer and basketball and has an appreciation for design and architecture. Tony is a banker turned baker who brought his best friend's dream of healthy bread for all into reality by growing a small local bakery into a North American brand. After working for 5 years in finance, Tony heard about Gio's idea for building a better bread company, and he quit his career, never looking back. Tony has become a hands-on president at Queen Street Bakery and has now spent more than half his career building this bakery from the ground up, tirelessly working to perfect every level of the business along the way. When he's not working, which he always is, what keeps Tony relaxed is going for runs, playing soccer, and striving to attend every Barry's Fitness studio across North America. Without further ado, let's welcome Gio and Tony to the Product People podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, really excited for this.
I wanted to start off by asking you both about what food you always have in your fridge and why. Gio, maybe we can start with you.
Okay. For me, it's the basics. I've always got milk, eggs, my fridge, and then tomatoes, but not in the fridge. I've always got those in my in my fruit bowl.
I would say I'm a big snacker, so I have almonds at my desk. So not really fridge, but I have almonds on my desk. I have nuts at home in the pantry. I have some in the car sometimes. Probably one of the more common things I have always around.
So you both didn't tell me why. I want to know, is it just because those items are always on demand at home, or is there another reason?
Yeah, I wanted to see Tony's answer before I told you my why. Tony, I think I can guess why Tony keeps a bunch of snacks in. Probably have to do with him being a snacker. For me, it's the basics. I got 2 young kids, and so with milk, eggs, butter, bread, you always can make something, right? Whether you want to bake, whether you want breakfast, a sandwich, you always have that optionality. And the foods, those are the basic essentials for me, right? If I had to eat those every day, you'd be fine. And we'll get to it later, but it really goes back to why we got into this business in the first place, was just getting food back to its basics and making it real food.
Mm-hmm.
And for myself, something that me and Gio talk about all the time is now that the longer we're in the food business, we learn more about where our food comes from, and sometimes it can be scary. So in the last few years, I definitely have changed the type of things in my pantry and my own fridge. And nuts, it's basic. You know what it is. There's nothing. It's not that overly processed. There's nothing bad in it. So it's just like a guilt-free snack that for myself I like. So I'm not big into bars or like anything like that. So that's why I enjoy nuts.
So speaking of scary, perhaps if you can share with us one of the things that surprised you as part of your research and learning more about getting into the food business, something that you thought, wow, I really didn't know that this is how this kind of food is made, and it kind of surprised you, scared you to an extent.
Yeah, I'll kick it off, Tone, because then I think we might have similar but different viewpoints on it. Let's go to bread, the product that we started with and that we make, all these bread and baked products, right? When you look at what goes into bread, if you were to make it at home, it's a very simple process with just a handful of ingredients. Every package you turn over or used to turn over, things are getting better now. Every package you would turn over at the store would have numerous additions to those basics. And one of the things I naively came into the business thinking was, well, if I can just make a bread the way it's supposed to be made, that's going to be great. Everyone's going to want that. It turns out that there is sort of a tug of war between optimal health or products made for optimal health and then products made for optimal distribution. Because of the way things are set up in North America, there's a lag time between when the food is made or harvested, in the case of fruits and vegetables and things, to the time we actually eat it. And so when we first had a product, our first products only had 2-3 days of shelf life. And there was no way you'd be able to scale that to provide your product to everybody with only 2 to 3 days shelf life. So then the question became, how do you scale up to bring this product to multiple markets from where you bake it without compromising on the ingredients that you put into it? And that's been both the challenge and the exciting part, and now one of our differentiators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for myself, I would take it even further that when you turn the package of food around and you see the things that you don't recognize, that's scary. But as I learn about food, even more, and in certain countries are worse than others, but the labeling of what certain food manufacturers do, it's sometimes it's very ambiguous. What were natural flavors is a common one I think most people catch
Mm-hmm.
on. Now you can just say natural flavors, and that can mean 50 different things, and you will never know as a consumer. So you don't even know what you're putting into your body, even if it is labeled, because it's such an ambiguous labeling. So those are the things that we have learned, and we had no idea when we first started and didn't realize. And then we've tried to change the way how we portray our products and the ingredients we use, so that we don't go down that path that we don't really love about the food industry.
Okay. How did you first meet and what inspired you to start Queen Street Bakery?
We met many years ago. It's a great question because we've tried to narrow down and pinpoint the exact time we met. Tone, I don't know if you remember the exact moment we met, but we went to university together, and so it was both quite a long time ago, and there's many hazy days when you're at university. But we met through mutual friends. Tone, do you remember exactly
No,
when
no,
or
I
the first
don't.
time we met?
It's a
So
game that we sometimes play with friends of, hey, can you name the first moment that you actually meet, and see if the other person can name an earlier one. But it's a tough game for friends of 15 years. But no, unfortunately, I don't remember the first time either.
yeah, all we know, it blossomed into something very nice. So we don't know the exact origin story, but it's
Mhm.
become a great friendship since then.
So sometime during university, we'll keep it at that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. And what's inspired you to start a business together?
So I guess technically we didn't start it together. I got into it first. Tony had a much more
Mm.
respectable job. He was in banking and finance, and I got into this bread business as a side business, mostly because I believed it's a product that should exist. We were looking for something better. We had the ability to invest and make something better. And so we did it. And honestly, never really intended for it to be a multinational product. It was just going to be in our local market and make something that would make a little bit of money maybe, but in the end, feed the people in our area that really wanted this type of product. And it just caught on. We can get more into that later. But while I was in the first few months of this, Tony took a special interest and would always say, have you talked to this person? Or do you think I thought about this for marketing? Or I know this person here. Have you talked about this store? And at one point I just said, Tony, have you ever thought about being involved in this, doing something entrepreneurial? And Tony can answer whether or not he had, but we had never discussed it together. But he took some time and thought about it. And yeah, I mean, eventually we always joke. I said, hey, Tony, you want to come work twice as hard for half the money? And thankfully for me, he said yes.
Tony, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, so that was a pretty good description of how it happened. I'd worked traditionally at big businesses. I've worked at TD Bank, PC Financial, which is part of Loblaws, Rogers, bigger corporate 9 to 5 jobs always. And then I saw Geo working on this, and I just thought it was really interesting. It was a really cool concept. I had never thought about being an entrepreneur or working at a startup. That was never something I looked for, but I just saw him working on this, and I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was cool that he created a food product that we can all eat, that our friends could eat, family members. I just thought that was so fascinating. Food is a really cool industry because you get to create something and you see other people enjoy it. There's been times that I meet someone for the first time, and on their counter they have Queen Street Bakery bread. Like, it's a really cool feeling. And when I saw him doing this, it really sparked my interest, and I was just offering to give my advice and have fun. And then Gio gave me the offer to come join him, and I couldn't pass it up.
So now I think we can get into a little bit more about the purpose of Queen Street Bakery. And I want to understand first, maybe at an individual level for you, if you were to think about what's your purpose and how does that come together now, given the work that you're doing. Gio, maybe you can start on this.
Sure. I'd say what your purpose is, what my purpose is. I don't know if I've fully formed an answer to that. And I think that develops and changes as you mature. For me, family is extremely important. And I spend a lot of time with my family and friends. And so purpose is probably something related to them and that. And in a certain way, bringing things to life that improve the lives of those around me seems to be a purpose, although I don't know if that would narrow it down. But I guess to put it simpler, I just really like to see good ideas come to fruition. So if I can make it happen, I've tried to do that. And so this bakery was a natural extension of that. And just really, in the case of the bakery, there's my mom who was diagnosed gluten intolerant. And so we were eating a lot of the products that she was trying. And if you weren't gluten-free, you wouldn't have chosen to eat. And so I said, well, we can make something that you would choose to eat that tastes really good and, maybe provide some nutritional benefit that's free from a lot of the fillers and things like that are in typical mass-produced breads. And so we gave it a shot. And it seems to be that I've had a lot of fun with that. And Tony always jokes, and my wife jokes as well, that I, with two young kids at home and a couple of businesses on the go, she said, don't even think about starting another one. But I'm always thinking about, this should exist, or this could be a really good product, or this should exist as a business. And so it seems to be, as I grow older, I'm learning that that's maybe my purpose, is to help with those things, help those around me. And a line that my dad always uses is make other people's dreams come true. So if we can do that along the way and have fun along the way, I think we'll have had a very successful life.
Thank you. Tony, you want to share your thoughts?
That's a very introspective, something I haven't really tried to do before. But I would say my purpose, or at least something common that I find myself, I gravitate towards, is I've always enjoyed challenging myself. I guess it's what makes me feel alive. I just really enjoy doing really hard things, and starting a business is really hard. It's only 1 in 100 make it. Like, it's really, really hard. And throughout my life, I've always just enjoyed taking on challenges that I probably wasn't set up to do. I've always liked to beat the odds. I find it challenging. I embrace it. It takes a lot of sacrifice to do really hard things. And maybe it's just something in me that I enjoy doing that. And then coming out on the other end, whether beating it or accomplishing it, it gives me purpose for myself of this is how I want to live my life. And you kind of have to have that feeling to want to start a business, because there is so much sacrifice involved in your personal life, your relationships with everyone around you and everyone close to you, other goals that you might have in life. It conflicts with all of them. So I would say, yeah, I just really enjoy taking on the odds and trying to give my life fulfillment and how I want to live my life.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. You kind of highlighted a little bit on this as we started in previous questions, and you were speaking about the problem that you're trying to solve with starting your bakery and then some of the things that you learned about the food industry and so on. Let's dive into this a little bit more. What problem does your business aim to solve?
I think the problem that we aim to solve from the beginning is still the mission for the company. It may have altered slightly, but I don't think so, Tony. You can correct me if I'm wrong on what I'm saying on it. But, for us, I'm not gluten intolerant, Alsawe. So for me, the thought process was always, if we could create something that is more nutritious and tastes as delicious as traditional bread, why not eat it? So that was the original question. And that was the original premise, right? My mom had to eat things that were gluten-free, but me, as somebody who could eat gluten, wouldn't choose to eat those. And that was, so gluten-free was its own segment of the market. We said, well, if we can create something that people would choose to eat because it tasted and functioned like a traditional bread, except it was made with superfood and things you have to eat anyway, like seeds and beans and other ingredients like that are full of nutrition and omega-3s and iron. If you could make a bread that has all that baked in, and you would be none the wiser if I gave that and another piece of toast on a plate to you to taste test, then you've got a really interesting business, because now people will choose to eat this because they're getting both the nutrition that comes from it and not sacrificing on the taste or function. And that's what we always come back to. Does it function the way it's supposed to? Is it filled with ingredients? Is it made with things that our body is supposed to have? And if it doesn't fit those two criteria, we don't use it as an ingredient. We don't launch it as a product. But that's been our North Star on that. And that's the problem we're aiming to solve is can you make gluten-free not a have to have, but a choose to have? And in our case, the products are also allergen-free. So it's not just gluten, but also a lot free from the common 8 allergen. I don't know, Tone, do you think that's fair to say or have I missed something?
Definitely the mission we've realized is creating a product that is made from things you should be eating anyways and doing our part in the food system that is not giving your body things that like we react bad to and just so happens to be allergen friendly. Like our brand has always been not allergen friendly first. It's been about ingredients that you can pronounce and understand, some nutrition, and that tastes good. Oh yeah, by the way, everyone can have it. No one is. It's free from the top 10 allergies in North America.
There's something I'm curious about because as you walk into a grocery store, especially in the bread category, there's lots of options. And I want to understand from you, how would you describe your customer and perhaps give me a little bit more on the value or the unique value that you create for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say if I were to describe it in 2 words, I would say an ingredient reader. The person that you see who grabs a product in a grocery store and turns it around and looks what's in it. I would say that is definitely our type of customers, people who want to understand what they're putting into their body and can they pronounce it. It's why we started Gio when he's like, yeah, I know how to make bread at home. It should be simple. We've prided ourselves that our products right now can be made. You can buy every individual ingredient at a grocery store. You don't need access to some special chemical plant or some company that you don't understand. You can go to a Whole Foods and buy every single one of our ingredients. It'd be very hard to make at home. Gluten-free is very hard to make, but the ingredients are simple that you can buy them yourselves. So an ingredient reader, someone who cares about what they're putting in their body, is our main ideal customer.
Yeah, I learn something new every day. That's a great way to put it because that is who we care about. I've just never heard Tony phrase it as ingredient reader, but 100%. It's funny, we have, when you're marketing for this, and we're not marketing experts by any means, we're learning that as we go along and leaning on those around us and those that have been a part of this journey for us. But, it's always, hey, what's your key customer? What's your ideal customer profile? And for us, it's been really hard to nail down because there's everybody from the new parent that cares about what they're feeding their kids to the healthy person in their 20s who wants to put better stuff into their bodies to a diabetic 70 or 60-year-old who is looking for a bread that doesn't have sugar, or a 50-something who has realized that, gluten has made them feel bloated their entire life and they're just kind of coming onto that. So if you look at the whole spectrum of our customer base, it really ranges from children who eat it. Now they don't go out and buy it themselves, but the parents that buy it for them, right up to, those in their 80s. I think, Tone, somebody emailed us the other day who lives in a retirement home, who said, I love your products, keep going. You guys are doing great. I can't get access to it in the facility, but I go out and buy it on my own. And it's messages like that just keep you so encouraged to keep on going. And that he took the time to write us. I think we actually sent him a box of stuff just to make sure he had it. But our customers are really bought into the message around what goes in your body is important. Your food is health, whether we want to admit it or not. You can't be perfect in all things, but you can be better day to day on what you're choosing to eat for the majority of the time. And then, to keep your sanity, have your snacks and you can go outside of it. Nobody has to eat perfectly 100% of the time. We want to be that option 5 out of 7 days a week, obviously more, but at least 5 or 7 days a week where, you've eaten this and you're doing something good. Right. And so like to Tony's point, right. We want people who are looking and saying, I don't know what titanium dioxide is, but it probably isn't something I should put in my bread or any of my food, right. Or a brominated vegetable oil. Like these are probably not things that I can grab off a shelf and bake into bread. I don't remember my grandparents baking their bread with an ingredient like that. So can I get something at the store that fulfills that? And so our customers really care. They are willing to listen to the story. We've done hundreds and thousands of demos ourselves where we actually tell the story and people are willing to sit there and listen. And to us, that matters because they take that, they internalize that story, and they understand why we're doing what we're doing and also why this product is the best product for them, right? And I'm not saying that we're all things to all people. There are lower calorie breads, there are lower carb breads, there are higher protein breads. We are trying to be sort of that everything in moderation option that you can eat every single day, right? It's got the right mix and it's got the ingredient profile or the macro profile that comes from the natural ingredients we use.
Thanks for sharing. Okay, we're going to take a short break. And when we're back, I'll be asking you about frameworks.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Hey there, amazing product people. The cost of living in Canada is rising. and many Canadians are struggling to afford basic needs. That's why we created Humanize, the moneyless exchange platform that helps people save on meals, rides, clothes, stays, and more. Now it's your turn to help. Contribute through the Humanize website. That's humanize-platform.com by clicking on the Support Us link and mentioning Product People. We will use all proceeds to buy quality bread from Queen Street Bakery and deliver it to food banks across the country. Thank you for joining in to make a difference. Let's continue where we left off. I wanted to ask you about frameworks. Now, there are tons of business advice and frameworks out there today. We've got everything from lean startup, blue ocean, design thinking, agile. I want to know for you, what worked?
I would say what most people don't know in food as well, especially for early brands, is a lot of people don't make their own product. It's a lot of people, and we use the term co-manufacturers. There's a lot of companies out there. They come up with a food idea. They get someone to make it for them because they don't have the engineering know-how, operations know-how, how to create a product in a facility. So it's very common. It's actually people advise people to do that. It's hard to be a person who's really good in marketing and innovation and understand engineering. So that's a lot of people give the advice on that you should focus on what you know and do one thing at a time. And as you grow, when you get bigger, then choose to open up a facility, a production facility. We didn't do that. We made a manufacturing facility from the very first day. The story behind it was that no one would make our product. So many gluten-free breads are very similar. We call them legacy ones that have been around for a long time. They're all very similar, and it's because a lot of them use the same machines. So there's only a certain range of product you can have. So from the very beginning, we realized that no one would make it the way we wanted it. They're like, oh, you should do it like this. This is how everyone does it. And we're like, yeah, we don't want to do it the way everyone does it. So we chose to manufacture from the very beginning. So I think a framework that has something that we've always had to rely on is like a lean processing, manufacturing type frameworks. It's funny. One of our first early in this journey, I think Gio, I don't know if you remember, you got me a book called The Goal. Do you remember? It's like you
Yeah,
read it in university, like on your
it's one of the
first
ones they gave
day.
us at
It's like a
Ivy. Yeah,
summer reading book, but this book, it helped sometimes I get too in the weeds and you forget. It's so important to have a framework that you can like lean back on, revisit, realign everything because you can go down the weeds in certain operations in manufacturing. And the book, it was just doesn't tell you anything earth shattering that you don't learn through learning frameworks, but it just like it was a nice reminder of how to not only apply standard general operational practices, but doing it while navigating life, which is the hard part. Having a family back home, having people who are important to you, and being able to turn off when you leave work and turning it back on when you come to work. And now I buy that book for every senior operations at our bakery now. Every new hire comes with a goal book just to kind of remind them of to have best manufacturing processes in mind when here, because we are creating things from we're creating processes that don't exist in the wider bakery market using machines that we're like customizing machines. So there's a lot going on here. So relying on operational frameworks really have helped us to get where we are today.
it's a great question. Tony and I both did business school at Western, and that's where I actually first got introduced to the goal through our operations class at Ivy. And you could learn these things, but when you're starting a business, there's also the element of you're just head down because there's 20 fires that are happening at once, and you have to put them all out while also trying to grow the business and keep everything going. And so you're trying to lean back on these things. Sometimes you're going to break the principles that may come from one or the other, but you're just so focused on making sure that thing survives at that early stage. You can't stick to your guns on any one particular framework. But I think in saying that, like if I remember the lean startup, one of the things they talked about was, don't focus on can a product be built, focus on should it be built, right? And that's something that we continue to take forward, right? Should this product exist? Yes. So we continue to push forward. And there have been many instances along the journey where Tony and I have said, should we call it? Should we just cut our losses in this? And we get a message or we get a phone call or an email from somebody, and we always come back to, is this product better than what's out there? Yes. Is it a product that should exist? Yes. Can we make it and do it eventually profitably? Yes. So we continue to push forward. I don't know what framework that one would fall in, but I think that would be the essence for a lot of businesses. And now we've gotten to that stage where you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and things are improving and people know about your product and they're telling other people about the product. But there's always this fun balance. I work with my dad as well, and that's been my working career. He didn't go to business school, I did, and we had this really fun interaction and this sort of positive tension between, hey, there's the pie charts and the graphs and all the things you learn in business school, and then there's your hands are dirty and your boots on the ground and you're going to do the hard work that you have to do. And sometimes those two things don't line up. You can show me everything you want on paper, but it's got to play out in reality, which is something he calls the reality machine. So we've taken sort of this measured approach, and then you do what you have to at some point. Tony, I don't know if you remember early on, like our first facility, El Sawi, was tiny. And remember, this was not something that we thought was going to be a multinational product. It started off as a small local bakery. So we had this commercial facility, and we literally didn't have enough power for all of the machines. It looked like Griswold's family Christmas or whatever, Christmas vacation restaurant, where like you've got a plug with 8 other plugs in it, and you take out the mixer to plug in the proofing machine. Like that's what we were doing. But we did that day in, day out for months because we didn't want to let the customer down, the end customer, nor did we want to let our direct customer, the retailers, down and short ship anybody. And so you get through that, and there were hot days, and the facility would get smoky at times, and you're trying to get the smoke out, and the fans aren't big enough because the power wasn't enough, and you're going through these experiences, and you're like, wow, this is not easy. But these are stories we're going to tell for decades, because it's also a ton of fun. And it's something that Tony said earlier, like it's really hard, and there's sacrifice. One of the questions I get often is, how is it like, what's it like working with a friend? Isn't that tough? I said it can be if you make it, but at the same time, you spend so much of your time working. I get to do it with a friend of mine. I work with my dad, I work with one of my best friends. Like who can be upset by that? We always, for us, the important thing is we always attack the problem. We never attack the person, and that helps keep things really above board. And so we've had a really good time with it. I'm sure some of these frameworks talk about a lot of these things, right? That we're just kind of learning by doing, because I haven't read all the frameworks that are out there or studied all the frameworks that are out there, to be honest.
Well, thank you both for sharing. One of my takeaways was the reality machine framework tip from your dad. So that's interesting to share, and thinking about the different perspectives here. Tell me more about customer feedback. You said that it was always a constant source of inspiration for you.
I can't understate enough how difficult it can be in those early days when the business is small and it's costing you more than it's making you, and you're trying to decide whether or not this is something you should continue with, which is why a lot of businesses fail, because a lot of the time that answer is no. But how often, almost as if a sign from the universe or a divine sign, where we get a message on one of our darkest days from somebody who said, like, you would think it was fake if we didn't have this, and it was only us working in the business. Like something who says, my husband just got diagnosed celiac. He was so bummed. He loves bread, yada, yada, yada. And you guys have saved his life. And I'm like, that sounds too good to be true. And I'm like, Tony, is this a real review? We're looking at, yeah, this is a person in, somewhere in Canada, and they gave us this, and we're like, see, this is making a huge difference. There is an improvement based on what we're doing, and people really love our products. And so we have to just keep going and tell that to enough people, right? And so we stick with what it is. You get a lot of feedback around what you should do with your product, suggestions. Some things are doable. So for example, pre-slicing our bagels is a really critical item that we do. And people love that they're pre-sliced, because you can only have half a bagel if you want it, but also it just makes it easy to pop frozen bagel in the toaster when it's already sliced. And we've gotten that feedback about our English muffins. Hey, can you slice those too? Because they're hard to slice when they're frozen. That's doable. Other times you'll get feedback and they're like, I don't really love beans. I'm like, well, I appreciate that. Our product may not be for you, but I can't remove one of our critical ingredients that we believe is beneficial to you and to people. So sometimes you can do it, and sometimes you can't, and sometimes you won't. So hey, it gets moldy faster than a typical bread. Well, real bread gets moldy in 1 to 2 days. Ours can last on the shelf from 9 to 11. We found natural ways to do that. But I'm not going to compromise our values by putting in something unnatural that will get it to 20 days. If that's what you need, we're not the perfect product for you right now. But if we can find natural ways or proper ways to do it, great. So you take the feedback. There's some camps that say consumers don't know what they want. You have to tell them what they want. We're not fully in that camp. I think we continue to pursue what we think is the right set of ingredients and the right product to put out there. And for the most part, that'll resonate with the majority of people. We just have to be able to tell that story to 350 million people in North America, and eventually beyond.
Yeah, feedback has definitely saved our business in more ways than one. Just like Gio alluded to, like there are some really, really tough days. And somehow that so happens to be the day that a real kind, honest review comes through an email or through one of our social channels. And you're just like, oh, like that's why we do it. It really makes what we do every day so worth it. One of my favorite ones is that we received a letter in the mail saying that, thank you so much for making this product. You've changed my life. And it was a letter in the mail, handwritten. And I was so shocked. And I don't know, maybe this makes it sounds weird, but like, who writes hand letters anymore? Like, I
Sorry
don't
about that, man.
receive a handwritten letter from anybody
I'll write you
close to
more
my
letters.
life anymore. Yeah, exactly. Like, no, you know what I mean? Like, even wedding invitations nowadays are mostly digital. Like, there's just no one does that. And we received it. It was a specifically hard summer. It was like our second or third year, and it was really, really hard. And we got this letter in the mail. We still have it. We have it pinned in our offices, because it was just the kindest thank you note from somebody. A lot of feedback that we get, good and constructive. We're very lucky to have 25 bakers here at Queen Street,
Mhm.
and they
Great point.
love seeing that feedback themselves. So it's nice when me and Gio see it, but we try to share all feedback to our bakers. Because me and Gio are out, we do meet our customers, and that we get that energy back. But our bakers who work hard every single day, they don't get to see it on the streets as often as Gio and I. So we try to make sure to make a point to show them. We put them on our board, and people love it. They absolutely love it. It gives everyone pride. And feedback has just helped us iterate our products over the life of our business. Just a little tweaks here and there, getting when it's constructive, and we're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe it should be a little bit bigger, or maybe it should be a little smaller, or you know what? We should upgrade the type of oil we use in our product. We have taken feedback, but still try to hold to the core of our brand and our mission. But feedback is everything.
When people think about customer feedback, they think about the product itself. And certainly that is a key component of customer feedback. But how do we incorporate customer feedback? Point Tony made about bringing that feedback back to the good and the constructive, back to our whole team, so that it fires them up, so that they get excited, so that they feel encouraged, so that psychologically they feel happy about what they're doing, and they can see that they're actually making something that people eat. You can incorporate feedback into product, but you can also incorporate that feedback into process and into talent management and in retention. And that's a great way to think about using that customer feedback too, Tony. I don't even really think about that, but it's right. You take that back and you encourage the team with, hey, here's what you're doing, and people love it. And here they're actually writing letters to tell you that. So you guys are doing something that is making a small difference, but every single day in people's lives.
Yeah, it was very important during COVID. I will never forget this. Early COVID, first week of like the world shutting down, we were part of the food supply, right? So everyone came to work during COVID when it was a very easy and scary time to leave your house. Every single one of our bakers came to work, was proud to create a food product that was available in grocery stores across North America. And it was because of the notes that they hear from people appreciating that they're at work and making the product that they need to live every single day. Bread is considered an essential as well. It's very common of many people's diets. And so many people were messaging us and giving us feedback during those early days, being like, thank you so much. We appreciate that you're going to work every day in during a very scary time, because we were in essential service. And yeah, it definitely has fueled us.
That's inspiring. I think the impact you create on people's lives and sharing it with your team definitely is one of those things that keep people going
Yeah.
and bring that energy back and bring them along the journey. I wanted to ask you about you personally, both of you. Since you started working on this business, how have you changed as a person?
Yeah, there's so much. I'm definitely a different person than I am today than 6 years ago when we started this. I would say there's so many things that have definitely changed me. I would definitely say building resilience from as a when it comes to as a person, like that you have to learn to be resilient when you have a startup. There's just so many things that go wrong so many times. You hope there's more things that go right than wrong at the end of the day, but and that's how you continue progressing forward. And we've grown so much, but there was definitely a lot of really hard times, and emotionally it really challenges you. That definitely has translated in my real life, in terms of hard things happen in real life as well. And I definitely feel very comfortable when things happen in my personal life, that I'm just like, there will be a tomorrow. How do I make tomorrow better? How do I not let this affect my attitude? I try to live a very positive life in general. That's something I've always really tried, but it's definitely hard when tough things happen. As you get older, you realize things of how hard life is when you don't realize when you're a 19-year-old in university. Tough things happen. I think resilience is it's probably the biggest thing that I notice that in my personal life, I don't let things affect me that much because I'm like, nope, there's gonna be a tomorrow. And I'm already thinking of how can I change my circumstances to continue on in the best positive way. That's what's definitely changed me as a person the most.
When you're in a corporate role, it's out of, especially a big company, you have a certain set of things you have to do, but you're kind of within that silo because that's what's required of you. The moment you go into running a business, and when Tony came over, we had 2 or 3 employees. The moment you come into running a business, you have to factor in every single element of every single day, every positive and every negative that comes your way, and somehow learn to compartmentalize that, problem solve really quickly, have a backup to plan A and a backup to plan B, know when to trigger it, and sometimes do things that on paper, wouldn't make sense, but you have to do it for the longevity of the company. For example, if you're doing a bake and something went wrong, and so half of the product wasn't sellable, on paper you would say, well, I can't ship today because I'm going to lose money on the shipment. In reality, what you have to do is say, no, then I'll never have that customer back. So we're going to run a second shift. We're going to rebake everything. We're going to basically scrap it. So my ingredient cost today was double what it should be, but I'm going to make sure that the customer gets the right product today and gets it all. And we're going to take the hit right now. And you learn about how fast you have to do those things. Tony's learned that, all while managing good feedback, bad feedback, employees not showing up, power dying at the facility, ingredients not showing up, ingredients being late, all of these things that can happen on a given day, especially when you're in manufacturing, and having to take all that, use a bit of your gut, put it all together and make the best decision. But I think, Tony, you probably learned of yourself, like, oh, I can do so much and incorporate all that. Also, while maintaining relationships with buyers and doing demos and talking to customers every single day. Like, Tony's really, really good at that, and really cares about the business. So having that passion show through. I think as a team, and what I've learned about myself, but I wouldn't say this is exclusive to me, Tony. I think it's both of us. The tenacity that we have, the business, we're unwilling to accept defeat. And we've realized that now. Like, we've gone through the hardest of the years so far, and things are improving because the sales continue to double every single year. And so now that the hardest part's behind us, we realize, yeah, we weren't going to stop doing this. We're not going to let it fail because this product should exist. So we're going to scratch and claw and make sure that this thing gets to where it needs to be. And that makes us both difficult to compete with, but also gives us that driving passion, right? You take the good with the bad each day. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but ultimately onwards and upwards. There's no straight path upwards, and realizing that early and just knowing you have to take your licks and get back up. I've realized that you have it in you. You don't know you have it in you until you do it. We've learned that we do. And now there's as much excitement as there is worry. There's always a good and a bad. I don't know how much of the backstory you know, Alsavi. When we started, we were really small. We had this little facility. It was fine. Because of the success in a few local stores, we got a chance to look at a national deal. We pitched that meeting before we even had the proper infrastructure in terms of like bags or codes or distribution to do it. It was a successful pitch meeting. So then we're like, hey, this is really good. Oh, wait a minute. How am I going to get my product to Vancouver? Okay, so now every good comes with a potential difficulty, and having to problem solve that really quickly. I mean, even if you think about our journey, we did all that. That was all in 2019. We found the distributor. We found the broker that helped us identify that distribution. We get into the warehouses in January and February of 2020. In March of 2020, and this is in our first year and a half, March of 2020, COVID hits and the whole world shuts down. And we're also a manufacturer. And we're like, okay, great. We just got a national deal and it all got distributed. No one can go into stores to buy it. Are we on the websites? If people search Queen Street Bakery gluten-free, does it even show up? Can we even go into the facility to manufacture this stuff? I mean, you have these great days where you're like, wow, we just got a national account with Loblaws or with one of the major retailers. And then it's like, wait, can we even make it? This huge wrench has been thrown at us. And so powering through all that and being there and having a really strong team with us that's grown since those early days, and backers in the business who believe in us enough to fund it through those days, putting that all together really helps you realize that, yeah, everyone's putting their faith in you. You need to wake up and you need to problem solve and you need to push forward every single day. And you don't know you have it until you do. And this has helped us show that we do have that. right? And Tony's got it in spades among his other great qualities.
Thank you for sharing. You both spoke about difficult times and things going wrong, and you definitely shared some examples. What do you think perhaps is the biggest challenge you faced so far? And I'd love a story around that.
Oh, there's so many. And we're still appreciative. I hope that this comes across. We appreciate all the growth that we've had and doubling and tripling in size every year. But definitely, I think the some of the hardest is just handling scaling. Learning to scale is very tough. Someone put it, I don't remember who described it this way. They're like, it's like trying to repair an airplane when you're in the air. That's like, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying. That's not the under ideal conditions of how to like try to rebuild a plane in the air, but that's kind of what you do when you have a startup. You don't have the infrastructure to double in growth from many different ways, from marketing, sales, but very importantly, operations. Another similar story to what Gio was saying was when we first got Walmart and they took our hamburger buns. I will never forget. We were together. I think we were actually on vacation together, Gio, and we got the notification that we got Walmart. And we're like, amazing,
Work the math
national
backwards.
Walmart all across Canada. They're gonna have our hamburger buns, and my within 5 seconds, I was like, okay, we need 20,000 hamburger buns like in 3 weeks. And we don't have a machine that can make it that much that fast. And the panic that comes immediately at that point. And I remember having to like, we hired people, we had friends. We were still in our old facility, so we didn't have a machine that we couldn't plug another piece of electrical in there because it would short circuit everything. We had to like make that first order by hand, like day and night, 24 hours, like a dozen people just rolling hamburger buns for our first order. And that's the type of stuff that just like was so hard managing the growth because and never wanting to slow down or say no. We have to. We have to figure it out. So okay, level one, how do we innovate a machine to make it the way we want it to make? Because as I said earlier, standard machines weren't working for us. But at the same time, I also still need 20,000 hamburgers in 3 weeks, that there is no magic bullet to do. So, how many friends owe me favors? How many people can come in and start rolling? Like it was. And we have so many moments of that. We've been thankful to have a lot of milestones over this, but unfortunately, that has happened to us so many times. That one was just a memorable one because it physically hurt.
That wasn't the only one. Hey, remember the one we had to do one in 3 days. Remember the one where we worked 72 hours straight.
Costco, yeah, we had a Costco, our first Costco order, and Costco orders a lot at once, and we just didn't sleep overnight.
Tony and I lived at the facility for 3 days. Yeah. My wife was pregnant at the time. She came in, she was stamping bags. We called in two other friends who came in to help pack bags, wrap skids, weigh out flour. Like we had 8 skids to deliver and we had 72 hours to make it. And this was in a facility that was 1,000 square feet of production space with 100 amp of electricity. Like you didn't even have the space. You would have to move machinery around just to do it. And when we got it done, like we were going to do it. At one point, one of our employees passed out, so it was three of us who were going to work the overnight shift. He
Yeah,
passed out, so we're like, okay, we're gonna send you home. Like obviously you're overworked, so everything was fine.
What?
But
Okay.
Tony and I were like, okay, we have to do this whole operation with two people because we're the only ones working this first night shift. We actually made, I think, a skid and a half or 2 skids ourselves in that overnight 8-hour shift, which I was pretty proud of.
yeah, we just like just got in a mode and just went. But like those, they're definitely very tough moments. But we've always have delivered.
The biggest thing at our stage of business from inception to now is that you aren't a massive international food conglomerate. So why would the buyer for a massive international or national retailer put their faith in you?
Hmm.
And that's a real question for them to ask. And for us, it's because we will always deliver. I'm
Mm.
not going to let you down. You give me the chance to do this.
Yeah,
I'm not going to let you down, right? At least on making and delivering the product to you, I'm going to get that there. I'm not saying we're 100% perfect, but our fill rates are amazing. And that gives them the confidence to say, yeah, okay, I'm going to give you guys a shot at doing this, even though a lot of small companies never make it. And to Tony's point, We've never let a retailer down on that because this is the lengths that we're willing to go through. So yeah, does it look great perfectly in those early days along the way? No. But if we had to run 3 shifts to get 1 shift worth of products, we did it to make sure that our retailers had confidence in us. And now that we have a 35,000 square foot facility and we can do this stuff much more automated, now they're giving us even more opportunity because of the fact that we went through those days and did what we had to do to make sure that we didn't ship. So it's one thing to have something on paper and a contract. It's another one to have your word is your bond, and to have that handshake agreement to say that you're going to do it and deliver on that. That gives people that confidence. It's something that we really take forward with us. And what we've learned along the way is, and this is how Tony and I got started, as you know, but everybody who is working their jobs is also really excited to hear about what you're doing. I mean, how many people, Tony, have offered to help or asked or are just curious about the story because it's kind of exciting and it's a fun little change. And so, while we're, yes, on the one hand, taking advantage of our friends from time to time when we needed them to come in and do it. On the other hand, it's like, hey, you want to come bake for 8 hours and just see what that's like? It'll be a fun story that we'll talk about for years. You're part of this journey. You're part of this startup with us. We're making stuff that you eat. It's a circular relationship where you give us feedback and we take it in and we use it to create better, and then you eat more of it. And we're not this big conglomerate where it's going to fall on deaf ears. We're this small and growing business that the feedback can actually get right through them. And you're kind of part of this journey with us. And we want our customers to feel bought into that process and feel like what they say matters.
You both mentioned a lot of great nuggets here. I put some down: asking for help and being surprised at the willingness of people to help, building trust. I think, Gio, you mentioned that a number of times. Working within constraints and leading by example were some of the highlights. And I wanted to ask you, is it fair to say that vacation was cut short?
I think luckily we got it at the tail end of that vacation, so we were on our way back anyway. If that's what it called for, that vacation would have been cut short.
Okay, fair enough. Switching gears a little bit and understanding perhaps more of your thinking around causes and things that you care about. So we kind of spoke about that earlier, but I wanted to know, is there a specific cause, topic, or anything else on your mind that you're passionate about and would like to share with our listeners?
I've always been passionate about food, mostly as an eater and consumer of food, and now as a producer. I've always also, though, hated food waste and not knowing where your food comes from. I grew up, my grandparents immigrated to Canada. My mom immigrated as well. So just used to seeing a backyard, grandparents' backyard was a garden, knowing and seeing how the food grew from seed to fruit or vegetable, seeing them preserve in the way that you can do things in a very sustainable way, and how you can make products very simply. Cooking is actually not that difficult if you're willing to take a bit of time to learn. And then going and seeing how many products have things in them that shouldn't be in there. I know sometimes it's necessary for distribution, but the more we could get away from that. So when we had the opportunity to create a product that just gets us back to basics and gives the body more of what it needs, it started as something that I was quite interested in, and now has kind of become a passion. We really believe in that, and if we can do that for many products, we will. Tony and I joked about vertically integrating and growing our own ingredients for the bread as well, where possible. I know that's, it seems like a crazy thought, but if I knew exactly where it comes from and how that product was cultivated and planted and what you use to keep it safe and making sure that it was free from chemicals that might be used, just even in the growing process, the more to that we can get, the better. We try to avoid all food waste. So breads that are maybe not the prettiest breads, that are not great for sale, we donate to make, because they're still good. They just may not look perfect. So we donate to make sure that they get put to good use. We're really tight on the ingredient side of things to make sure we don't waste any ingredients that are unnecessary. And just really helping people understand what goes in, passionate about teaching people about reading and just thinking about what goes into their body, what they're eating, because ultimately food plays a huge part in our health. And I don't think that's a secret anymore, but I think every day more and more people are realizing that if you eat things that are chemicals or that are not food really, and you put that in your body every single day, it's going to have adverse effects on your health, short term and long term. So if we can get back to and get away from some of that stuff, the more you can do, the better. And we can be a part of that. And that's become a passion of ours now. I think, to just how can we put that into as many products as possible that are within our wheelhouse. So that's how we got from breads to bagels to hamburger buns and English muffins, and we're going to go from that and beyond.
Thanks for sharing. Tony?
Gio said it. It has become my passion now. It is my common dinner conversation. It's what I talk about all the time now. As we learn more and more about the food business, our food supply is it can be very scary. And I try not to make it sound so scary all the time, but I definitely am leaning that way more and more. And I'm really trying to let people know, hey, like watch what you eat, like really understand what you're putting into your bodies, because there's a lot of things out there that we don't know and don't understand the effects that we're going to have from it. So it's probably the number one thing that I preach, I talk about, I tell friends, family. I make everyone an ingredient reader now, label reader, like turn the product around, look at what you're having. Do you need that? Is there an alternative that still tastes good and you can understand and actually helps your body? It's something I'm passionate about, and Gio described it perfectly.
I want to be clear too. We're not perfect. I eat chips and I eat candy. Like, I have croissants and then all these things that, traditionally aren't like a super, just a healthy food. The goal for us is, can I be good 80% of the time so that the other 20% of the time doesn't have as big of an effect, right? And so, we're saying this, we try to practice what we preach. It's very difficult to live, and I think it's very unsustainable. You're eventually going to fall backwards if you try to be 100% perfect all the time in terms of what you eat. You have to give yourself some leeway. I believe in that. That's how I live, is to give that leeway, but just try to eat better where you can and do that the majority of the time. And I think the other thing that's coming across, and I think we're on the forefront of, this is not necessarily a passion, but just something that we think about quite a bit, is carbs have been vilified for a long time. Carbs have been the enemy for 15 or 20 years. And certainly if you do a low carb diet, it's likely you're gonna see the effects that you want. But carbs and carbohydrates are a fundamental energy source for us that I think most people aren't getting as much as they need. And that, remember, 25% of our energy use, I think it's taken by our brain, right? Like, there's so much uptake and power required just by our brains that if you're not feeding enough, you're not going to think clearly, you're not going to be at top of your game. And so, we think we're in the early innings of people coming back to carbs. I think carbs are going to be treated the way fat was. Fat was bad, and then we realized, no, we need fat. Let's just make sure we have good fats. I think in the same way, carbs were bad, and we're all realizing, well, empty carbs, simple carbs, maybe that's not what we need. But if you can get your carbohydrates from beans and chia seeds and sorghum and millet and other sources like that are high in fiber, actually, that's really good for you. And so I think people are going to come back to carbs and are going to realize bread is not the enemy. Just find a bread that gives you a healthy set of carbs with a good amount of fiber and some good co-benefits like omega-3s or iron, and you'll actually be better off for it. And you won't be so hungry. You're not going to snack because you have this big carb deficiency each and every day. So we think people are going to continue to move back to bread and start to use this to fuel a more active lifestyle and do the two together.
I wrote down "make carbs great again," but I'm not sure if that reflects it.
It's funny. We one of our friends, he actually was one of the people who came to the bakery to help us out during one of those examples we were talking about. He had said, "Hey, look, your slogan should be 'Make bread great again,'" right? And so we're kind of joking about that because bread was, "Oh, I can't have bread. No bread, no bread." I said, "Well, you can have bread. Where you go to Italy and you go to France, these people are eating. I mean, in Italy, you can have a pastry for breakfast, but it's the moderation, it's what they eat, it's the fact that they walk and stand so much more often than we tend to in North America. And that's not just Italy, that's a lot of Europe, Eastern Europe, Asia, like a lot of these other places in the world tend to be a little bit more active. Their portion sizes are a little bit more in control. And then, they enjoy their pasta, their bread, their croissants, their baguettes, bagels. They're enjoyed. It's just those bagels, oftentimes are made locally and they go to local bakers. So the ingredients are just proper 3, 4, 5 ingredient type products. And then they don't have 4 bagels. They have 1, right? And so I think being able to moderate will allow you to come back to all those foods you love. I don't think you have to give it up. And I don't wish that on anybody. I did a low carb diet once in my life. I will say I was a heavy early teenager, and I tried the low carb thing, and it worked. But man, I hated it because you can't eat anything when you're on a low carb diet. And it was great because it's allowed me now to live my life going forward, where I've got everything in. I try to do it in balance, so I never have to give it up, and I don't often overindulge either.
Mm-hmm. I think that principle was something you spoke about throughout, Gio. Principle balance. You mentioned that as part of the product mindset, even in the way you recommend things. You mentioned a couple of times how it's not about being perfect, but it's about having a balanced approach to things. So it's one of my takeaways for sure. I want to know from both of you, for those interested in learning more about you personally, about your business, and perhaps about connecting with you, how can they do so?
I think for myself, honestly, it's tough to say to use social media, but LinkedIn, I'm a pretty active person on LinkedIn. I think it has done a lot of amazing things to connect people who and make it in a comfortable way of people you've never met, but feel comfortable connecting and talking ideas, connecting. In no other channel do I like, especially in phone calls, right? You think it's fraud or something, but on LinkedIn, I'll get emails being like, "Hey, would love to talk about this, and get your perspective." I answer everything. So I think connecting with me is LinkedIn is the best way to learn about Queen Street. I think our website is great. We have blogs. We have a lot of information. All of our products are in there. Ingredients, why we use these ingredients. We have blogs about the ingredients we use and why we use them. I think is the best probably place. And to see a little bit of our personality, probably our Instagram, our Queen Street Bakery Instagram.
Yeah. Outside of any of that, I think Tony nailed it all. If we do a ton of demos and trade shows, we're often the ones working them because we love getting out and meeting people and telling the story about it. So if you follow us on Instagram or on LinkedIn, we'll often post about what trade shows are coming up, and if you'll meet us and people from the team at those shows for sure, and at our demos.
Yeah, if you happen to see Queen Street Bakery be sampling, there's a good chance it's one of us. So if you are in your local grocery store, like we
Mm,
travel a lot to sample. I've traveled all across Canada and the US doing sampling myself. So is Geo. So even though we're from Toronto and you live in a city 2.5 hours north of Calgary, like come up to us, see if it's us because it might be.
thank you. So, Gio and Tony, this conversation was inspiring, fun, and insightful. I want to say thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the Product People podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it, man. It's a ton of fun. You have us going down memory lane, which is always great to just step back from running and think about what the journey's been like so far.
Yeah, thanks for the chat.
I'm grateful to Gio, Tony, and the Queen Street Bakery team for making this episode happen. We discussed what it takes to start, grow, and run a business. We also spoke about returning food to its basics, the corporate versus startup mindset, the challenges of scaling, and the importance of listening to feedback. I found Gio's and Tony's insights to be inspiring, fresh, and useful, and I hope you did too. I want to express my gratitude to all our listeners. Your support means the world to me. If you found today's episode valuable, please hit subscribe, leave a review, or share this podcast with your friends. I also encourage you to share your feedback and your ideas on what topics you'd like to hear about next on this podcast. Your input is very important as it helps me learn and improve. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes, and until next time, stay courageous, creative, and compassionate. Take care.